welcome to The Real Deal On, and we're still in this Reinvention series, and it's an honor and a pleasure to have a special guest, a dear friend. He's not only my friend, an extraordinary human being, he's also has been my coach and an extraordinary man, and I just wanted to have the opportunity for him to share his journey of reinventing himself, because what he's been through as far as having to start from the ground up is incredible. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my dear friend, Mr. Jimmy Harding.
Thank you so much, man. What an honor to be here.
Oh, the honor is mine, indeed. So if you wouldn't mind, I guess share a little bit of what you went through as far as having to rebuild yourself, where you got to, and then what happened, and then where you had to go again.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, it's been several reinventions. You know, I don't believe there's one reinvention per se.
Right.
I think we go through a series of them, but like my major thing came as I've been a lifelong entrepreneur. You know, I always had, when I was 10 years old, I knew I created my own economy, and if I wanted $10, I'd go cut 2 lawns, you know, just the way it's always been. And, you know, so I very rarely had a job growing up. I always found a way to do something, and finally, you know, I loved the construction business, grew up around it, and opened my own construction firm. And you know, it started off as basically me and a helper in a pickup truck, and you know, by the time that business got to its height, we were building like 10 to 12 fast food restaurants per year, and then like a luxury home every single month. So on the residential side, so it, you know, we really grew that thing up. And
well, as you're doing this, sharing that process in and of itself is incredible. How did you figure out how to do that? I mean, I know we've spoken, you weren't necessarily swinging the hammers.
Right, right. So, you know, I learned the process, and I learned something that was really specific. Before I even knew anything about marketing, like I knew to be known for just one thing, right? So like I was known for just one thing in 2 different areas. So like we were either the person to build the restaurant, or if you wanted the luxury home in the residential division, you know, you would come to us. We'd have the homes and the parade of homes and, you know, all that type of stuff. But I've always been, you know, much more of the entrepreneur type who could put things together, right? So I could always assemble a team to do all of that, and I always had a vision to see something from concept to finished product before it was even drawn on paper. So I always knew that, you know, my strength wasn't going to be in walking through concrete, although I did that for, you know, a little time when, you know, I kind of grew up in it, and I learned and watched what everyone was doing, and, you know, I would take the best of the best and put it all together into my own system. In fact, one time, that one thing, specializing for something and going after premium projects, right?
Yeah.
So one time, while I had my own business, we were doing these big, before it evolved into building the whole building, we were focusing on building just the cabinets and stuff. And so we had to build some cabinets for a school. So like I would go after cabinet jobs that were 150, 250,000, right? So we'd want to do jobs. And there was a particular type of cabinet that I didn't know how to build, and I went and got a job at a cabinet shop while I owned my own business, just to learn how to build that, so I could see the process, come back and use it in the project we were about to start.
Wow, that's being resourceful.
So yeah, I mean, there's always a way, right? It's just how do we figure it out? And you know, you can either pay someone to show you, or you can get down and pay someone to teach you, you know, to do it.
And while you were going through those things, like learning the cabinetry and specializing, what was like your motivating factor? Like, what got you up every day to to do these things? What was your why, essentially?
Yeah, it it all came down to freedom for me, right?
Okay.
And freedom comes in a bunch of different ways, and being able to have my own business was just a vehicle to get me to
Right.
that freedom. But even then, before I even really knew anything about coaching or what that was, I mean, I'm a world away from construction now, but
Right.
back then, I used to love to just do that to show people it could be done.
Mm.
I would get my friends that would have, $100,000 in debt from going to college, and they couldn't even get a job, and I'm like, no, this is how you create your own economy. So I always would give people a hand up, right? People younger than me. I'm like, my nephew worked for me as an electrician. I'm like, dude, let's just start your own electrical business,
Right on.
and so I did a lot of that along the way, and that was kind of a big reason why too. It's just
Right.
like you don't have to conform to what society tells you that you should do. You can do anything you want. You just have to get resourceful.
Right.
Because that's how I grew up. I never had a lot of resources. We weren't well off financially, and things were pretty tight. My dad was a 25-year service veteran in the service, fought in 3 wars, and
Wow.
yeah, old stuff like Korea, World War II, and Vietnam. And so we never had a lot, right? Military retirement. And so, I always wanted to have more, and I
Hmm.
enjoyed doing for others. So I would
Right.
go out and create this stuff and show everyone that, this is possible. And you don't have to, that saying that it takes money to make money is BS, right?
Right.
And so it's just, how can you get resourceful and make that happen? And that's how I've built everything from the ground up. Like, I've never had startup funding or whatever. Whatever I was going to do, I would go out and help other people get paid for it and use that as the capital to start my business.
Right. So, what happened with your construction business was pretty incredible. Would you
Yeah,
mind sharing?
it was, So things were things were going really great for us. It was starting to be, the housing market was going down another place, but we were so specialized in what we did that it hadn't really affected us. And then all of a sudden, Hurricane Katrina comes along, right? And we've got 13 properties under construction, all in my name that I own, and we ended up having anywhere from like 2 to 13 feet of water in 9 out of the 13 properties, right? And it was pretty devastating. So, we had to recover from that, and then there was a big need in the community. We had lists of people calling us to help them get their houses back in order. So it was really a great time for us in contributing to the community, and we were rewarded handsomely for it because we helped like 87 people get back in their homes.
Oh, wow.
And so I had a huge why every day. There were entire families living in a FEMA trailer on the front lawn while their houses were being done. And I mean, I'm like, when I say a camper, like you would pull behind your car, and people were in that. And so it was every day we got up to see how fast we could get their houses done so we could get them back in there. And so that was a big why to do that. And we employed a lot of people and had a lot of spin-off businesses where my subs were able to start their own business.
Great.
So things were really booming, and I think it was like that for about 18 months. And then, like, at 18 months, there was massive devastation.
Yeah.
Some stuff that was moderately and lightly damaged. And about 18 months in, the bottom dropped out. Boom. And it wasn't that there was no need for any construction services, but what happened is the stuff that we did or the stuff that we were capable of doing was not available anymore. It was like we're down to the most damaged stuff now, and there's not even power back to those communities yet. And
After 18 months?
yeah,
Wow.
and so if you were not a contractor that was set up to do like $100 million jobs, like, big infrastructure and improvement type of stuff, then it came down to, very little work to be done. And so we had built all of that up and made a ton of, profits doing that. But then we started to buckle down into the next year and a half without much work, and me trying to be resourceful and keep everything going, because in my mind, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. This can't last. It's going to get better. I'm going to outlast this thing. I'm going to keep doing what we do, and it just never turned out that way, and hindsight, I would have done things differently, but I did what I knew how to do at the time, right? And so I just kept thinking things would get better, and we'd help a few people here and a few people there, and that's really what set me on to my journey to learn about marketing, right? So I'm like, when we were so busy in those initial 18 months, I saw a lot of people coming to town that had moved there to set up a construction company, and I saw them advertising and spending a lot of money on TV, radio, all kind of stuff, and I was like, man, why would those people do that? There's no I mean, we've got a waiting list. We can't even do anything. Why would we advertise? And from the specialty niche stuff that I had built before, we worked with a few people at a time, very intimately and high level. And so we always had, on referral only, all of the business that we could handle.
Right.
And now it was like going into a cold market to people that didn't know us, and I knew nothing.
And then people were still advertising at that time?
Yeah, and people were still advertising, and I was like, something's wrong here, because, I've been here my whole life. We've done all of this stuff, and these are brand new companies that came in town, and like, they've got all of the work now. What's going on here? How did this happen? And I said, man, I better find out about this stuff. And I went on a very expensive journey to not learn marketing, but I started buying advertisement and stuff, not knowing anything about it and not knowing what would work. I remember I was down to like, just over $100,000 in the company checking account. And I said, man, what can I do to get some customers? And so my thought was, I'd always been a Saints season ticket holder, right? Big Saints fan. So I said, I'm going to buy this advertising package that's $100,000 from the Saints, and they show your name and your phone number and all this type of stuff at the Superdome. So like at every game, my stuff was all over the Superdome.
So you spent your last $100,000.
Yeah. And so I thought that was it. You think, okay, if you could spend enough money to go to an NFL game, that must be an affluent market, and a lot of people still need construction projects done. So I'm going to be the official construction sponsor of the Saints, right?
How'd that work out?
The only phone call I got,
No.
The only phone call I got was someone else trying to sell me advertising. So yeah, it was some very expensive lessons, and
what did
finally,
you learn from that? What was the lesson?
Well, the first thing that I learned from that is that just because someone sells advertising doesn't mean they know what they're doing. Right. And then I learned the difference in what mass marketing is and micro marketing. like marketing to a certain demographic and a certain niche, that, just because you put your stuff out there doesn't mean that it's the right thing or it doesn't have the right message. So, it was,
We call that shotgun advertising.
yeah,
See
exactly.
what it lands on.
Exactly. And the stuff about the stuff was all wrong, right? So I didn't know, because I didn't know much about marketing or advertising, but like there was everything was like logos. It was like branding, right? There was no message to, really reach in and resonate. There was no story
Right.
or anything with it. So like in advertising, you need two things. You have to be able to make an emotional connection, and it has to be intellectually interesting.
Right.
And so intellectually interesting but there was no emotional connection at all.
Plus, you're competing with, if you're at the sports game, you're competing with that level of emotion.
Yeah.
So how do you tie it in that they remember it?
Exactly. And what I know now, it would have been, easy, instead of having logos, to have headlines and different things that address hot buttons to their needs, not to mine. It's the difference in client-centric and company-centric marketing,
Right.
which I didn't know anything about that at that time. So, eventually what happened is we ended up having to go and shut down. I spent all of my own personal money that I'd saved up. For about a year and a half, I paid the bank 30 grand a month, interest only, just because it's going to get better, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. So, eventually I ran out of money and I had to shut it down and give the properties back and start struggling for survival.
Right. And at the time, were you married at that time?
Yeah,
And
that's
so you
when.
still had-
That's when. I in the middle of it, when all of that was getting worse. I mean, that's when I met Susan, and she was in New York and I was in New Orleans, and finally I got her to come down, and so
It's going to get better.
yeah, it's going to get better. Nothing's going to stop us. And so she came down, and then we had James. So like, I'm sitting here my whole life being able to create whatever I wanted, and it seemed like everything I touched, just fell apart during that time. So this is like, that was a long struggle period, like from 2008 until 2010. And during that time, I learned a lot of stuff about marketing, because what I was doing at the time, just to survive, I had all of my construction equipment and that stuff, and I really had become, I hate to use the term, but like an expert in disaster cleanup, in mold specifically, right? And I had all kind of equipment. So, I said, how can I use this, right? What can I do? And so I said, okay, I'm going to start going on the road and to these disasters and start doing disaster cleanup, right? And so I learned a lot of stuff at that time, and I don't really like selling, like cold calling, that
Right.
type of stuff, right? So what I found out is when I just walked up to somebody, when I walked up to a house, I mean, you could imagine someone in the state they're in having, their house gutted, and you're going to go up to them and ask them about, hey, you want to buy some mold remediation? It doesn't work out real well, right?
Right.
But here's the important thing that I found out, just by trial and error and trying everything. When I started educating people, so I had some educational brochures created about, the 7 things that they have to do, and I started educating people, about why it is so important to have this done right, and I started educating them. So whether they ever came in contact with me again or not, by reading the information that I put out for them, in these packets, they were better off and they knew how to move forward with their family.
So I just want to acknowledge and notice a thread, and this is one of the reasons why I love you so much, is you are one of the biggest-hearted giving people. Like, it's amazing. For those of you guys, you got to get to know Jimmy anyway, like however you can find him, just Google him and get to know him. You give millions of dollars worth of information and advice, and like you just give it away, and you care that much where you see a problem and you get excited to help people.
Exactly.
Like it actually gets you like charged, and you're like, it's amazing. And this is something you hadn't shared before. We've talked about marketing, but this part of the story where you just were naturally educating people and okay with the fact that, hey, if they don't hire me, that's great. They're better off, and that's what's more important than whether or not they hire you. That you're more relational rather than transactional.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I just wanted to
and I mean that's when I knew, what happened is when I started doing that and I started putting out the information and I started educating people, I went from walking to someone's house and them, basically running me away or taking the card, putting it in their pocket.
Letting the dog out.
We'll get back to you later, all this type of stuff. Then, so like, instead of me going and talking to people, then I would take my crew and we'd go and canvass door to door. My crew was like me and my brother-in-law and one other guy at the time. We're putting out this information in all of this stuff, and then people started calling, right? And then it was something about me being heart-centered. Like I never could sell, right? Like I just don't like selling, but I love serving people, right? And so when they would call me, I would go to their house and I would expand on that education. And so really I was just consulting with them. I was helping them. And like, people were literally just pulling out their checkbooks. How can we hire you? How can we hire you? And that's when I really started to put together the difference in educational-based marketing as opposed to my logo dancing all over the Superdome, right? Yeah. And so, if I would have I wouldn't have done that in the first place, but knowing now what I know, I would have, had everyone in the Superdome going to a website to get some free information. Not call me to fix your house, right?
Like, oh yeah, another one of those people call and say, call me for work instead of, how can I add value?
Yeah, and it's another thing, about context, right? People are there to watch a football game. They don't want to hear from the construction guy. They're actually taking a trip to go to a game to get escape from their own construction nightmare.
Oh, great, you just reminded me.
Yeah, it was just, it was a poor decision all around, but,
As a matter of fact, probably you're lucky you didn't get calls going, hey, thanks for reminding me about the crap I had to go back home to.
Exactly.
I was trying to escape.
Exactly. So yeah, that was that was the big turning point. And then I'm like, man, I cracked the code. I know how to do this now. And then, so I started doing that, and that little environmental business started to flourish. Okay, and then I partnered up with a friend of mine who was in the oil field niche. They do mud logging and stuff like that. So it's like they drill the pressure.
Oh, right.
They monitor the pressure of the fluids down in the hole. They call it mud logging for some reason. But anyway, so we started a company together, and because he has all of these contacts in the oil field. I mean, they've been doing this for 70 years. And so we're going to put this thing together, and we start doing it, and we're doing little jobs here, little jobs there. But what I did was, from knowing about this marketing, I started learning more about it. And that's when I went to my first business mastery, and I started learning about the Dream 100 and educational-based marketing. I'm like, oh, that's what I've been doing. I didn't know you call it that, right? And so I learned this stuff, and I started marketing to my Dream 100s while we're doing these little jobs. And the next thing you know, my educational material gets me to a meeting in the boardroom of BP. Not BP, with an oil company.
Okay, yeah.
Okay? And so we drive to Houston, Texas, and had a meeting, and then, you know, through everything that had been going on, I mean, it wasn't just a meeting. We were going there to sign a contract. 7-figure deal to clean like 87 offshore platforms.
Did you have the infrastructure in place to handle that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah,
didn't know-
because of my partnership.
Right. Okay. I didn't know if you how much you leveraged yourself at that point. Yes, we can do it. And then
Yeah. No, it was all set up. I mean, there would have been, you know, obviously some growing pains, but anyway, that same marketing that was getting people to invite me into their home to educate them invited this big oil company to call us, right? And then we communicated back and forth, and then all I had to do was go there, do my presentation, and basically sign contracts. Now, the morning that we show up in Houston, my partner and I, we walk into this big giant boardroom, and there's a flat screen TV on the wall, and there's an oil rig on fire. We're like, what is this? What is going on? Is that one of yours? And it's like, that night, in the middle of the night before we got there, was the big BP oil spill in 2010. And so, like, I'm going there to sign this contract, and, like, this is really it. This is going to get me back on my feet. All of this work is paid off. All this struggle is paid off. And so we get there, and all non-essential services are canceled indefinitely. Boom. So.
And you were non-essential.
Yeah. So I'm going there. You know, I'm going there to get money. You know, we need this money. You know, and all of a sudden, boom. You know, and I was in shock. You know, I was like in shock, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm thinking, man, what is going on here? You know, and I had, you know, just a few months earlier been to Date with Destiny, right? One of the Tony Robbins programs. And I remember stepping in the elevator, and my first thought was, man, how could this happen again? And, like, before I even finished the thought, it would be no. I said to myself, no, we're not going there. How can I use this experience to help others?
That's like huge. That's, I mean, that's pretty much the context of everything that I teach and that we talk about is changing that meaning in that moment. Don't get stuck in that story, because you could have written a completely different story. It could have been, God didn't want me to succeed. It wasn't meant to be because I'm supposed to be, you know, like, and you could get into this victim mentality. You could have easily fallen prey to a victimization conversation.
Yeah.
And how did you catch yourself? Like, how do you do that? When that happened, did you, like, do anything consciously to give yourself that opportunity to shift? Or what came up with you that you were able to then go down that path of what else could this mean? How could I make this serve?
So I noticed the stepping back a few months during, you know, right before things started to click with the environmental company, when I said everything I touched just seemed to fall apart. And that's when I was back in that mindset of, like, I was stuck in that story. No matter what I did, I was a victim, and I was stuck in that story. And then when I went, you know, to my first Tony event, that's when I mean, it was like, this is what's wrong. I'm stuck in this story. You know, everyone I talk to, I'm complaining and whining. They're probably tired of hearing all of this stuff from me, you know? And so what happened was I realized that, and that's when I got into state management, and I started doing the language, the focus, you know, all of that stuff.
Started changing the question.
And then, so what happened was I had been practicing that stuff, you know, for several months. And when I got on that elevator and I started to think like that, I'm like, no, we're not going back there because we know what road that leads down.
Yeah.
This is the new road. And so literally that one thing in the elevator, about, is this happening to me again? I can't believe, nope, we're not going there. To how can I use this experience, not only to help me, but to help others, right? And that one question was the catalyst for another reinvention, right? We just talked about a couple of, but here's another big reinvention, and it was the catalyst to opening a marketing company and like mastering marketing and changing and moving into the way that I coach and consult now. It was all based off of that thing, because here was my thing. It's like, okay, here's a guy like me, just New Orleans guy. No, I mean, I went to college, but only to play football until I got hurt, But I mean, no specialized education or anything, and been a contractor my whole life. And I thought to myself, this skill that I have, how did I end up in the boardroom of a Fortune 100 company getting ready to sign a contract? And so I said, if I could do that for myself, maybe I can help other people do that too.
Wow.
And then the next thing you know, that's where the marketing company came from, the consulting company,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, several reinventions in that progression. But I think that was the big defining moment,
For sure.
of which way it could have gone, because it could have gone either way
Yeah.
at that time.
So what advice would you have for someone who is having to reinvent themselves? Because a lot of the people who are also watching the show are having to reinvent themselves personally as well, like dealing with, addiction. And it's not just addiction to drugs or alcohol.
Sure.
I mean, we're addicted to
Everything.
drama,
Right.
right? To
Addicted
the stories
to
that
story.
we tell. Addicted to being the victim, right? So what has been sort of some of the defining things, like if you were to, and I know you already do this, I mean, your son James is brilliant, and I just love watching him grow and all the things that he's doing. What words of advice have you been able to give him or support him? And what words of advice could you also give to maybe someone who might be struggling with having to figure themselves out again?
Yeah. And it's okay, right? And so here's my advice to everyone, that when you have to reinvent yourself, when something traumatic happens, you have to look at the good side, because there's an opposite reaction to everything that happens on, right? And so I would say, get into a place where if you take a little time, figure out exactly what you want, and then go after it, right? So one of the big mistakes that I made along the way is I kind of knew what I did not want. So I never got specific in what I wanted. I got specific in what I did not want. And what I found out is that's not good enough. We have to put focus on. And can I tell you a quick story about focus?
Please.
When I was learning all of this stuff, I was actually coming back from a trip from Atlanta. We were working a flood down there, and I'm driving in my work van, and I've got chemicals in it, and I made a poor decision. I was like, I should have slowed down and got off, but I was thinking about passing up that exit, but I had to go to the bathroom and I couldn't wait. So, I made a move real quick on a wet highway, and the van started to spin, right? And I had been listening to Tony about focus, right? And focusing on the right thing, not the wrong thing. Now, the reason people hit telephone posts when there's just only a
100 yards
quarter
in
mile,
between, yeah.
because it's like, don't hit the post, don't hit the
I hope I
post,
didn't
don't
hit
hit
the
the post,
pole,
right?
yeah.
And you're focused on the post. And so I had that drilled into my head because I had been listening to it, and my focus was stay on the road, stay on the road, stay on the road. And the vehicle just stopped and like nothing happened. It was a miracle. And that's the first time, that I saw concrete proof in my life that focus was so powerful. So that's why I go back to that story. Figure out what you want and focus on that. And don't be scared to fail, right? Because it's not a failure unless you quit.
Right.
When you reinvent yourself, if you say, this is who I'm going to be, don't matter. You don't have to be that for the rest of your life. You can reinvent again. You can reinvent again. So, I just keep trying to get better and better and better. And, as I go through life and I get these experiences, it's like, really, it's not even about me and what I want, because here's the fact of the matter. If I do the right thing and I serve others, like, God's plan for me is way better than my plan for me. Because if he would have given me my plans, I would have shortchanged myself 100 times over, right?
Wow, powerful.
So it's just about it's just about focusing and looking at the good side, because I could find something positive in everything,
Yeah.
right?
And I'm noticing now, just from the work we've done together, how you do incorporate that focus in your conversations with your clients, with me, is about the focus and helping your prospects, your clients, or even when you're marketing, like, help them focus on how you're going to offer a solution, how you're going to add value. And it's all through that positioning, that asking the right questions.
Right.
And really, at the end of the day, I think one of the reasons why you are so successful is that the first person you are marketing to is yourself. And you've learned how to ask the right questions, to focus on your bigger vision, servant leadership, to add value, to contribute, and that keeps you. And I'm mind reading, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's just an observation.
Yeah.
Is that what keeps you moving forward and giving freely? Because as you're giving it all away, now your hands are open to receive from wherever, and the more you receive, the more you're able to give away, the more knowledge you get. I mean, you share the information, you go to an event, you go to something, the first thing you do is share it with us. You're like, hey, I learned this new thing, like, check this out, here's where a shift has occurred. And that's just so powerful, because, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
Meaning all of us. And you are one of the most giving people I know, with just your heart, with your information, your wisdom.
Yeah.
What you shared today, you've shared some stuff that you hadn't shared with me before, and I'm sure it's going to be a huge impact for someone who's ready to reinvent themselves yet again.
Yet again, yeah.
Because that's the journey, isn't it? We're always transforming, right? It's just growth.
Yeah, it's a series of transformations, right?
Yeah.
But the most important one is the first one.
Right.
And the most important first journey is just the first step, right? Just taking that first step and building on the success.
You don't have to get it right, you just have to get it going.
Yeah.
But when you're moving, if you do have to change directions, you have more momentum and energy to do so than the analysis or paralysis through analysis, where you never take a step and you're trying to figure it out. You're like, oh, what about this? What about that? And then all you're doing is writing stories that are stopping you, as opposed to having a vision to write moving forward.
Right. And one thing that one thing I can say for certain is, whenever I sit down and I think about anything that could possibly go wrong, and I may have some fear holding me back that has creeped in, and I think about 25 different scenarios of what could go wrong, never once has any of the stuff that I thought up actually happened. Other things may happen, but the stuff that I plan and make up in my head, it isn't reality, because that has never happened once.
And I'm going to hallucinate some of the successes you've had not the way you thought they were going to happen either.
Yeah, exactly.
So you were open to, like you shared earlier, God's plan's bigger than your own. So
Yeah.
if you get locked into your specific plan, you may lose out and, like you said, shortchange yourself. And truly, you'd be shortchanging the universe. You'd be shortchanging God. You'd be shortchanging Susan, James. You'd be basically everybody by not allowing yourself to blossom into the best version of you that you co-create with God.
Yeah, I tell you, and it's really fun to watch. You know, James. I mean, he's 8 now, and when he's getting ready to race his car in the Pinewood Derby at Cub Scouts, I mean, he's literally sitting there visualizing his car going across the finish line first, right? Wow. And so he's had that race hundreds of times before he even goes to the race. And so, like, you know, 2 years in a row, he won his class. You know, so just teaching him that and about setting goals and, you know, when you hit that goal, don't stop to increase the goal.
I remember,
right?
that Cub Scout thing, right? What was it, the goal? I don't remember what it was, but he beat his goal in like the first day.
Right. So we kept bumping it up and bumping it up. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. He actually got invited to Indianapolis to the popcorn company because he was in the top 10 in the country of online sales. So to share his experiences in a brainstorming session.
Oh, that is brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, is there any last bits that, as we've had this conversation, you know, thank you so much for sharing yourself.
Oh, my pleasure.
Any last bits that, you know, maybe you're getting a message from somewhere inside, any last words to part with? Do you have anything that...
You know, struggle, if anyone is struggling, struggle is temporary, right? Or even more important, if we can detach ourselves from the struggle and realize that hard times can still happen without the struggle, where we catch ourselves in the story, that this too shall pass, right? And so as long as we keep moving forward and we don't quit, we never fail, right? If we can look at things as everything is a lesson, there's a lesson in everything that we do, and it's good to have lessons that don't turn out the way we want, as well as it is to have, you know, lessons that turn out better than we wanted.
Right.
Both ways are okay, and as long as I can be okay with that stuff and not have to predict and know the outcomes of everything, then life gets better and simpler each day.
And the one thing that's beautiful, what you started with, which is, I would hallucinate, is kind of what everyone's struggle is, going from the transformation from slavery to freedom. Addiction to freedom. Because slavery is just, it's self-inflicted.
Yeah.
That addiction, whatever it is, whether it's your story, whether it's your the victim mentality, whether it's the, you know, whatever it is, substances, the internet, doesn't matter. We're chained to that because we ultimately, though, want freedom, emotional freedom. A lot of people think financial freedom is what they're going for, but financial freedom is only emotional freedom ultimately, because then you get to, you have the opportunity to do those things, to provide, to not feel again chained, to not feel stuck.
Yeah, you know, it's really funny that you say that, because I mean, you know, I've had my struggles with addiction and sobriety and that stuff, but you know, that's been put to rest about 15 years ago now. And I had an old guy who was helping me when I struggled with that, and he had been around for a long, long time in that community, you know. And he taught me something that I never quite got it when he said it, but what I really started to understand, and it clicked for me later, is he would always say that, you know, financial security is not a certain dollar amount in the bank. It's right here, knowing that everything's going to be okay. And like that stuck with me a long time, and like I can carry that same principle in a whole bunch of different areas. Yeah.
like in using, you mentioned Tony, that's where we originally met was, I remember the first time meeting you in person was at Business Mastery. I think you were a Plat at the time, a platinum partner. You're just walking down and like, there's Jimmy Harding, and we were friends on Facebook, I think.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, finally. But where's that train taking me? Oh, right. Is that at Tony's events? Like Tony, obviously he's larger than life, giant man, and his whole thing when he comes out, he's like, yes, yes, say yes, and he's all that, like accessing, unleash the power within and saying that. But the true power is actually that confidence of knowing it's going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you don't have to force it. Then you're like Bruce Lee. You're like with the water. Yeah, it's gonna, it's gonna be okay. I'll figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, when you can get yourself comfortable into a place that just no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. That's true freedom.
Yeah.
Right. And that doesn't mean that you won't go through any pain or any struggle. The struggle's optional, though.
Right, but
you're
people
going to
go to the gym. They go to the gym because they want to get results, but they know that if they don't get a little uncomfortable, they're not going to get the result.
Exactly.
So that struggle is actually vital at times, or not the struggle, the discomfort.
Yeah, the discomfort.
Right. So struggle is the way you're using it. If I could use suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, where you're making a negative meaning of it. Like suffering is victim.
Right. Right,
like
exactly.
Pushing through the stress, the pain, the discomfort is victory. That's like, I mean, you played football.
Yeah.
The great game is the one where it's like neck and neck, and they're fighting and they're doing everything they can, and it's uncomfortable, and you don't know what's going on, and you just have to step up and follow through and keep the plan going and just make it happen.
Yeah. And I mean, after we helped all of those people after Hurricane Katrina and that long 18-month period that we went through after that and losing all of the money and all of that stuff, waiting on it to get better, that was suffering, right? Because I was stuck in that pain and I was stuck in that story. And, once I was able to flip that around, I mean, heck, I've been through hard times. I go through hard times all the time, but it's not really hard times, because I know at the end of the day, everything is going to be okay, right? Because my focus is always like every single decision that I make in my life, in my family, in my business, it's about a greater good, right? And so it's not even necessarily about me. Like sometimes people ask me, what do I do certain things in business for? That's not a good financial decision, but I make every decision based on what's best for my clients, right? And at the end of the day, what seems on the surface to be a poor financial decision ends up being a very good financial decision because, I'm not in a transaction business. I'm in a relationship business, right?
Right. Well, and one of the things that on all of our conversations and, blessed to be part of conversations, when you're coaching other people to just be in the room is you're definitely quality over quantity. You're not about having, you don't want to be McDonald's of what you do. You're totally cool being, specific but like intense with your clients, and you underpromise, overdeliver in ways that is inspiring.
Well, thank you.
And I've been, absolutely blessed to know you as not only, a human. I mean, I love you as my brother, and as a mentor, as someone you've given, me priceless advice. And I know that I'm human and I don't always apply it at the same time because, like you, sometimes, we get kind of stuck.
Exactly.
It's...
Yeah, I mean, it goes in every piece. It goes in business. It goes in marketing. It goes in life. Like at some point, it comes down to congruence, right?
Yeah.
And so I look at my own stuff sometimes and I'm like, man, I'm telling people to do stuff I'm not doing. I better fix this, right? because it's not about saying to do stuff. It's about doing the stuff you say to do.
Right. Yeah. Leading by example.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your most valuable asset, your time and your wisdom. I love you as my brother, and I can't thank you enough
Oh, I
for
love
spending
you
your
too,
time.
man.
And yeah, I look forward to more journeys with you and anything
Yeah.
I can do to support, as you know.
Absolutely.
If you haven't started Googling Jimmy Harding, start Googling right now and get to know this man. Because he's a brilliant, one of the biggest hearted souls you'll ever meet. So thank you for playing with us. We love you for who you are and who you aren't. God bless.
Thank you.